It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth, I-77 Road Warrior, back at our studios in downtown Columbia. Professor Tom Hayes is here as well. Brian Leonard behind the bulletproof glass once again tonight, turning the dials, taking your calls. Will Pelagic and Big D with the Clemson Tigers preparing for the Cotton Bowl. Coverage of the Belt Bowl, the Cotton Bowl here on Sports Talk. More from the Gamecocks as they had their final practice of the year. Always got to be a time of mixed emotions. You know, if you're a younger guy, it's like, man, I'm glad it's over. Got more practices ahead. If you're a senior and you're not going on to the NFL or professional football of any type, then that's it. That's the last practice you'll ever have. And so some mixed emotions there. Meantime, at Clemson, we are waiting on the result of the infamous B sample that the NCAA has been looking into related to the suspended 3 Clemson football players. Most noteworthy, Dexter Lawrence, who spoke with the media today at Media Day. We'll hear from him coming up. And, Will, that is now the story around the Clemson football team, as much as you'd like it to be based on X's and O's and the things that they do well and the things that Notre Dame does well and how Notre Dame can beat them and how they can beat Notre Dame. And other coaches and players have tried to keep the focus on that. But you know how the media is and you know how the public is now. That has been the big story. Dexter Lawrence showed up today at Media Day, and he took on the questions head on about his situation.
He certainly did, Corn, and it's funny. I will not quote the off-Broadway musical Urinetown, which deals with urine, but there is certainly a lot of privilege when it comes to basically the number one topic around this game, which is the 3 suspensions of Dexter Lawrence, Zach Gaiella, and Braden Galloway. Interesting to note that both Gaiella and Galloway did not show up at the media availability. They basically allowed Dexter Lawrence to kind of handle the speech for all 3 of them. And according to Clemson officials, he was given every opportunity to not show up. And they basically told him, if you don't want to show up, we'll get your back and we'll say that either you couldn't speak or didn't want to speak or things of that nature. He didn't have to, and he actually took it on himself and said he wanted to face the music and wanted to demonstrate his leadership. I think I would say, just from being there, issued some genuine contrition for the situation, not necessarily for the actions, because he, along with everybody else in the Clemson program, will continue to ride the hard line that this was something that was done either unintentionally or without knowledge of anybody who was ingesting this illegal substance in their system. The one thing that continues to kind of bug me, Corn, is that people are so, I would say, quick to implicate the young men in this case and maybe not so much look so much at the school. I almost feel that this is a situation where we almost have to turn our attention to the institution. And from everything that I would at least come to gather over the last couple of days, and after hearing from Lawrence himself, no one would put themselves in the kind of situation and dig such hard of a line if they were not telling the God's honest truth. And not only that, from that perspective, it is certainly plausible and makes it more plausible the fact that there are three people in this implication. It's not just Lawrence. If this was an isolated incident with one player, then you could probably draw more harsh conclusions on that one player. But the fact that there are three players on the same team who are implicated with equally severe foot injuries, who have lockers in the same area of the Clemson locker room, as Lawrence said today, it tells me, Pro, that I think this is more of an institutional issue than it is any of these young men doing something, what I would call, in a word I used today with Dabo, nefarious.
Well, that's why I think probably the Clemson, as I said, has done everything they can to find out how these guys may have gotten it, including hiring a private investigating service. Because if somebody is tampering with stuff in that athletic department, more than these three may end up testing positive for the same thing. So you got to nip this in the bud as quickly as possible. As far as Dexter Lawrence is concerned, with the implication of the failed drug test, part of his initiation and part of his future interview with the National Football League started today with him showing up at that press conference.
Yeah, good point. He was a big man to do that. And like I said, he took the questions head on, and we'll hear his answers to those questions here coming up. And again, it's kind of echo what Will said and what we've said this week since this thing first broke. I think my position has been benefit of the doubt until we find out more. We really don't know anymore since this story broke. You know, everybody's been digging into their medical dictionaries to find out what this thing is all about and what it does. And I mean, in simplest form, this is a drug that is not legally available in any country, yet somehow, some way, it shows up in some beverages, some food, or in some kind of in some substances. It somehow shows up, and apparently, in some cases, without the person who has ingested it knowing that it's in there. So, the fact that three people that we know of tested positive for this, and they all have similar situations they're dealing with, is that just coincidental that that's the case, or were they all drinking from the same bottle of fluid that they were given, or were they all sitting in the same look? I mean, I saw a quote from Dan Radakovich where they said they were testing the salt in the salt baths that the guys sit in. I mean, they're digging into this thing, I guess, openly and honestly as much as they can. Is it something there? I've seen other things brought up where this substance could possibly occur and get into the system. I don't know. The question, too, is, and I don't know if this has been asked of anybody there, were these the only three guys who were tested? Do we know how many members of the football team in this particular test by the NCAA actually went through it?
I do know that answer, Corn, and they said it was about between 18 and 20, according to what Dan Rad told the media today. He wasn't doing anything formally. He was just kind of talking in between where all the tables were on the field at AT&T Stadium. But they said, though, about between 18 and 20 players were ones who were tested in this kind of end of the season NCAA drug test, and they do them randomly. It's not necessarily something that is a scientific formula around there, but they do those tests throughout the season and also in advance of the championship round. And the one thing, too, just to piggyback on your point about the Epsom salt tablets, that also does seem, again, like I would say the most clear hypothesis in my point is maybe finding out and getting to the bottom of just where this happened, because if it is, there are some cases where I guess Epsom salt tablets have been contaminated with this particular chemical in the past. And I've read a couple of things here, as you mentioned, kind of going in the medical dictionaries. There are a lot of cases with that potential in fact. And I almost feel, again, this does seem more and more and more like something involving the rehab of these three guys with the foot injuries, because I don't think that the fact that they had similar injuries to them and the fact that they might be in those salt tubs and things of that nature is something we can overlook.
which makes you wonder. I mean, that makes me wonder more because you're talking about salt tubs. Well, they're not the only 3 guys in the salt tubs.
Mm-hmm.
And if they tested 18 to 20 guys, I got to believe that those guys, stuck their booty in the salt tub there at some point in time. I don't know. I just, again, benefit of the doubt. Clemson's trying to be out front of this thing and as honest as they possibly can. And, I give them credit for that. And Dexter Lawrence, who's been the only one to speak publicly, there's no reason to doubt his sincerity and honesty. He's never given you any reason before in his career, both in high school and college, to doubt him. I mean, were these 3 guys given something by a trainer at Clemson that had this stuff in it, knowing that this stuff helps muscles heal and get, and they each had a problem in an ankle or a foot that they were trying to rehab. Is that possible? Could somebody in their health and wellness area have done something like that?
That is possible.
Yeah.
I wonder if they can also test for masking agents while they're doing the test for other stuff.
Okay, we'll hear from Dexter coming up.
That's the sound of the Clemson band just outside the Media Hotel here at the Omni in downtown Dallas. They basically held an impromptu rehearsal here around 5:30 local time, or 5:30 Eastern time, 4:30 local time here right before we went on the air, and had a lot of people jockeying about around the lobby here, and certainly getting themselves ready for Saturday's game, as are the players. The final practice held today for both Clemson and Notre Dame, at least the final full practice for the two teams inside AT&T Stadium. The two teams will go through a non-padded walkthrough tomorrow in advance of Saturday's game at 4 Eastern, 3 local here in downtown Dallas and the Arlington DFW Metroplex. As we said before in the show, Dexter Lawrence speaking for the first time today at the media day held inside AT&T Stadium. Here's what he had to say about the suspension from the NCAA for the illegal performance-enhancing drug Ostarine.
I want to say right now I'm at peace. I know that I have no control on what the B sample result would be. I just got, I'm just here to support my teammates and just try to be the leader and starter I've been all year kind of thing. And just helping it feel like I'm injured or something like that, not like just helping the mental of the whole team just be better and bring us closer together, things like that. And that's kind of what you've been seeing throughout the week. So.
Can you follow up on what Coach said about he has full faith that what happened was completely accidental?
Yeah. I can say I'm not the type of guy to do a selfish act like that. I have too much pride. I love this team and my family too much to even think about putting a substance like that in my body. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it got there. I was raised different. If I did do it, I own up to it. But all I can say, I honestly don't know where it come from or how I got it. It's just there, and there's nothing I can really do about it right now.
You still hope that you can play this game?
Oh yeah, that's hope. Just to see what the B sample say. I've been keeping my own mental right. That's kind of why I'm at peace right now. Just the support and the caring from this team helping a lot. They all got our back, and I just want to show them I got their back as well. That if I can't play, I'm gonna have to be a good coach for them. Like Coach Bates, been teaching me this whole week.
Did anything change with your routine after the season or anything like that? Anything you can maybe think that changed that could have led to this test?
Honestly, no. I have the same. I stick to a strict routine. Nothing has changed. I'm confused. I'm mind-boggled. I just honestly don't know.
Are you still somewhat in a state of shock, or is this all completely settled in? What's going on?
When Coach Sweeney called me, I was in shock. I was looking at my phone like, "Are you crazy? Like, what's wrong with you for asking me something like that?" And then next thing you know, he told me I test positive for something I never heard of or know where to get it. So at first I was shocked, but talking it over with my mom, praying about it, talking it over with coaches and staff here, I came to more peace.
You said you don't know how it happened. How does something like this happen or get in your system, or how does a positive test come up?
No idea. Just like Coach Sweeney said, it could have came from anything. Energy drinks, hair products, just anything. I really don't know where it came from. So.
You were the only 3 guys on Clemson tested, or how many people were tested?
A lot of people were tested, but yeah, us 3 only people that tested positive. So we all don't know. We all just here. I don't know.
Is there anything in common between you and the other 2 guys as far as drinks you had or things of that nature?
No, the only thing common is we got a little locker code. We're in the same locker code. That's about all. We don't really. We don't really hang around each other that much.
What is your response to critics that say there's no way you didn't know what went into your body?
My answer is what I said earlier. I have too much pride in myself, and I love my team and my family too much to do an act like that. I'm not the type of guy to put that in my body. I don't even know how to put that. I don't know what I would use it for. I'm young, I'm still moving and going, but, that would be my answer to them.
That is Dexter Lawrence speaking again for the first time since getting an NCAA-issued suspension for the illegal performance-enhancing drug Ostarine. Guys, I'm probably more liberal on PEDs than either of you, just because I think that anything that gives the athlete the ability to perform at peak performance, I think is okay, as long as it's medically safe and tested to do so. But the thing I don't understand is kind of the hand wringing and the blasting that's come not just Clemson's way, but the three young men's way. I find that to be almost non-constructive at this point.
Well, it's to be expected by opposing fan bases. I mean, they're going to come at you from every direction, which is fine. That's par for the course with social media today. Something happens, especially like this, where there's questions and eyebrows raised. Rivals are going to come at you. Hey, listen, rival coaches are probably going to raise that question in recruiting moving forward in January when they get the opportunity to do a little bit of that. That was interesting stuff. I think all the questions that I would have asked were asked. The question about sharing a drink with the guys, I think he was asked, did the three of them drink from the same source or something along those lines? And he answered that. I think he answered that. Everybody's everybody's just trying to figure out how this happened. Just how did these three guys end up testing positive for the same substance, and they all have similar injuries. That's the thing that ties them together, the similar injuries, the closeness, I guess, of their lockers, and the fact that they all tested for the same thing.
Well, Will, you can answer this question. Maybe I've done a little bit more homework than I have, but the question I have not had answered is this: once ingested, how long does it stay in the human body?
From what I've been able to gather, I think it has a half-life of 24 hours, so it doesn't stay in the body long, and it metabolizes itself. I don't know if that necessarily is a timetable thing that they can go back and see, track everything that happened either. But the one question I kind of have for the two of you, and the question I really don't know if I have the answer to either, is what answer to the question, how did this happen, would satisfy you? Like what would, I mean, not saying that they wouldn't tell us necessarily the truth, but I feel like we're never going to get a good enough answer, I think, to satisfy those who are asking that penetrating question. I'm thinking the longer this goes, it's harder to see that happening.
I think if it can be proven this was totally accidental, I think you would be satisfied with that. If we find out that somebody in the organization gave these guys something with this substance in it in an effort to improve their muscle repair, whatever the injury happened to be. If this was done for that reason, in that fashion, then I think people would have a reason to complain about it and point the finger at Clemson, and they would have to do some serious digging there, and I think some heads should roll. Clemson, right. Unfortunately for them, going back how many years, Pro? 20, 25 years, maybe? Long time. They had a death on their campus to an athlete related to, and it led to a widespread investigation into drug use among athletes at Clemson. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to speak out of school. It was a track athlete, and this stuff was hidden under the table for a long, long time. Nobody outside of those who were involved knew it was going on. So you've got to be forthcoming, and you've got to be out in front of it to prevent widespread use. We saw it happen at South Carolina back in the steroid era, back in the 80s. So these things do have repercussions to them. You might say that these drugs don't hurt you in any major way. They're being used to help you recover from an injury and get you back on the field sooner. But they're illegal for a reason. There's a reason the World Doping Organization has banned these things, and the FDA and all that they've not approved it. There's a reason. It hasn't tested out to be good for human use yet. So that's scary, and Clemson needs to find out, how this stuff got into their systems, whether it came from on campus or perhaps they took something outside of campus, and if they bought it on the black markets and used it, then that's on them, and then the punishment probably should be in place.
I'm not saying you're wrong from the illegal substance standpoint, but there are things you can buy in GNC that are on that WADA list, and I think that is where you get to the point where it's like, we are splitting too many hairs in this situation. If you could buy it in a GNC or a vitamin shop or wherever, and you can't use it, that doesn't seem right to me. That's my only thing on it.
But this particular substance can't be purchased,
doesn't apply
right?
here.
Right.
That doesn't apply here.
All right, we'll be right back. Got many more things coming your way. Stay with us.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Continuing here on a busy Thursday night edition of Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard here in Columbia, the capital city, and Will Pelagic in Big D out in Texas, where they say everything is bigger in Texas. Leave that to your imagination. Coming up.
It's a lot bigger.
Coming up. Yeah, your face on Twitter looks a lot bigger in Texas than it does here.
Not nice.
Anyway, Brian like that. Coming up, we'll hear from Albert Huggins of the Tigers, Steve Montag of the Gamecocks here shortly. Coach of the quarterback will be with us. Looking forward to that. Steve Tannehill about to have his name erased from the Gamecock record books again by Jake Bentley, who needs, I think, 3 touchdown passes to break the record for most touchdown passes in a season for South Carolina. I think he'll get it Saturday against Virginia. I think they're going to have a good offensive day. And more from the Gamecocks and Tigers moving forward. Mike Morgan may or may not be with us. You know, it's one of those deals with Mike, waiting to hear back confirmation from him. Let's see, 800-956-7266. If you want to jump on board with a quick comment, observation, or question, 800-956-7266 is the number. Let me pass along a couple of things. Chatting up Ray Tanner today at the football practice. Oh, let me just tell you a couple of things about Gamecock football practice today. Debo Samuel was out there watching his guys go through it. He hopped out of his Rolls Royce in his mink stole and stood on the sideline there.
That's so
all Richie do.
That's so 1970s.
Not yet. It's coming, though. Anyway, he was there watching. Thomas and Lewis remain in yellow. Those are the only 2 active players in yellow. You got your guys who aren't playing at all, who aren't there or aren't dressed. Those are the only 2 active players still in yellow. They went fast on offense. Watching them today, they were really picking up the tempo. I thought the quarterbacks threw it well. Thought the receivers caught it well. One note I failed to mention from Will Muschamp the other day, Ernest Jones, the freshman linebacker, is going to play. They made the decision, he and his family, to go ahead and play. This will be his 5th game, so his red shirt will be used up if they play him, and I guess the plan is to play him. There was a skirmish that broke out in practice between Rick Sandage and J.J. Inabari. J.J. And it was quite heated and contested, and Sandage was quite upset for a little while there. So they showed some emotion in practice. Talking with somebody there who knows a lot more about football and football teams and talent and personnel than I do, I said, what is it that this Gamecock team is lacking to get to the next level? He came back with a very simple answer. What do you think it is?
Yep.
Better offensive lineman?
Nope. One position.
Running back?
Yeah, big-time running back. I mean, they've got a good little group of running backs. They don't have a special. They don't have a special running back. Somebody with the ability to break tackles, cutting ability, speed, the whole package. They got guys who can do a little bit of everything. They just don't have that special running back, and that's what they're looking for if they can find one. Media day tomorrow at the Charlotte Convention Center. We'll have both head coaches and 5 players from both teams on hand for that. A couple of other notes of importance. I mentioned Ray Tanner. I was chatting with Ray Tanner today. He was very happy to see me. And along with the new digital board coming up at Founders Park, which I told him I was very glad. He also told me they are doing away with all the other numerals on the board. Like, you know, it's hard to read those innings that were underneath the previous video board because they weren't lit. And so, you know, I had to actually kind of count the numbers to see what inning we were in there, especially for night games. But that's just me. That'll all be done away with. All the statistical and numerical stuff will be on the digital board. He also said that he wants to, and I guess if he wants it, it'll get done. But he wants to place decals on the outfield wall commemorating CWS titles and appearances and retired jerseys, not retired numbers. I'm not going to retire numbers, but retired jerseys. And he wants his old number 1, taken off the wall. He doesn't like it out there, and he wants it taken off the wall.
Interesting.
He said he says the way an outfield wall looks to him is very important. He likes his outfield wall to look a certain way, but he does want to put some things out there to commemorate the appearances and the championships and the great players. By the way, Michael Roth announced today his retirement from professional baseball after giving it a nice run. DeAndre Baker at Georgia is not going to play in the Sugar Bowl, Kirby Smart said today.
Sounds plausible.
Yeah. Nice time to tell him. I mean, a little bit late in the process. Nick Saban said today that the guys who are suspended at Alabama, they've never said why these guys were suspended,
it's
right?
Drugs too. It's drugs too.
Unspecified NCAA violations.
It's drugs.
Yeah. He said they could be even out longer than that, longer than just the this game.
I think
in the Orange Bowl.
I think they're gone for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
I think is what they said.
So if they make it to the championship game, they will not have offensive guard Deontay Brown, tight end Kedrick James, and offensive tackle Elliott Baker. All right. So after practice yesterday we had the offensive players. Today we had the defensive players from the Gamecocks come over and talk to us, and that included Stephen Montag, who is a senior safety. He's done a nice job in his career with the Gamecocks, and we had a chance with other media to talk with him for a couple of minutes.
We look good. We have a lot of fun out there, just get my last practices in as a Gamecock. So, the freshmen, they really making the practice energized for us.
Can I ask you about two of them, Israel and RJ? What have you seen so far from those two guys this year?
A lot of growth. RJ wasn't playing earlier in the season, but one of the best defensive backs we got on the team right now. So expect a lot from him next year. Izzy, also the same thing, but I always knew Izzy going to be special. He's 6'5" at corner. You don't see that a lot, so I knew he was going to be special.
A.J. Turner and how he's picked things up. Sherrod just said he's a natural back there.
Oh, yeah. He's just a football player. If you put him at safety linebacker, he's going to make it work. He's going to look good at any position. So he coming around, when he gets his technique and everything right, he's going to be good too.
What's the biggest concern about Virginia's offense?
That quarterback, the quarterback, he's a mobile quarterback, so you got to stay in coverage twice. You can't really get out of coverage. Your defensive line has to be – they got to be they can't really rush up the field or he's just going to strike up the middle. So you just got to be patient with him and let him be a quarterback and not a runner.
Chaps compared him to the Kentucky-type quarterback. It's hurt you guys over the years. So, you feel like in practice back in Columbia and here you guys have kind of shored up that weakness in your defense?
Yeah, we had Carry-On playing quarterback. They're kind of the same type of guys too. So he's a really good player. The Virginia quarterback, he just like the Kentucky quarterback, but I think he could probably run a little bit better. But he got 1,000 yards rushing, so he's a good one.
Does the Carry-On give y'all a pretty good look?
He gives us a great one. He gives us a great one.
They've got a pretty good receiver too, number four. I'm not sure. How do you guys defend him?
We got to be patient with him. He's a shifty guy. He got 90 catches on the year. So we just got to be well aware where he's at every time in the backfield, outside, in the slot. We just got to know where his number's at and just play ball against him.
How does it feel when you have that last practice of your career?
Mixed emotions. It ain't really hit me until 2 weeks. I'm just at home thinking dang, can't practice no more with my boys. So it's bittersweet, more bitter, because I'm going to miss all of them.
That last play of the practice when AJ got that interception, all y'all are going crazy. Is that just because he's new to the position, or is that just something that kind of normal?
How the energy been at practice all week, even in Columbia. Even the scout team, we get an interception pass breaker, everybody flying around, dancing, having fun. So no matter if it's going against the offense or the scout team offense, we just having fun.
All right, Stephen Montag of the Gamecocks. And, I think the concern going into this game, guys, is definitely dealing with the quarterback at Virginia. I believe he started his career at Arizona State. Then he went junior college, and now he's at Virginia. The things I hear about him is that he's like a running back at quarterback, has really, really good speed. And so South Carolina is going to have to be aware of him. They're going to have to play their gaps well. And they're also going to have to not be sucked in. If you're a corner coming up to make a play on him, you can't leave your receiver too soon.
I can give you a comp on him. You remember the Virginia quarterback Marcus Hagans a couple of years back?
Yeah.
He's that guy.
Yeah. Or
basically the same player.
More recently, he's the Kentucky quarterback.
Also.
of the past
Not as
couple of
tall,
years
though.
that have given South.
Hagan's a better thrower than
Not
that guy,
as
though.
tall as the Kentucky quarterback.
All right, more from Dallas, from the Tigers, coming up after the break.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
We're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic back here with you with the Clemson Tigers of the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Phil Kornblut's been handling the South Carolina Gamecocks, the Belk Bowl in Charlotte. Professor Tom Hayes, of course, in our Columbia studios as well. 800-956-7266. Only just because I want to break from this talk about Osterine. There is a secondary headline concerning the Clemson Tigers, and not necessarily this year, but possibly next. And this is something that's kind of being efforted by Eric Borton of the Spartanburg Herald Journal and also Anna Hickey at 24/7 Sports. They were in a media scrum with Clemson running back Tavian Feaster and both kind of came out with a muddied future concerning the at least rising senior running back in Feaster, of course, the local product. I'm wondering, just after he basically said today that he's unsure about his future at Clemson, if the emergence of Lynn J. Dixon this year perhaps maybe causes Feaster to want to look elsewhere or even the pro level. I don't know if he's necessarily ready for that, guys, but one thing that Clemson has prided itself on is its running back depth, and that takes a hit if they don't bring back Feaster and Lynn J. Dixon going into next year along with ETN, I think.
True that. They do have a running back coming in this class in Chad Malusi out of Florida, who, again, is a guy that highly regarded. So they'll have another body coming in. They're still looking possibly at adding another running back at the end of this recruiting period. So, if that's what he decides to do, then it might be a smart move on his part. He has not been the dominant running back that was expected of him coming out of Spartanburg High School. We thought he was going to go to Clemson and be the next great thing. It hasn't happened. Others emerged ahead of him. Of course, you had ETN here most recently being the guy to carry the football. Prior to that, it was Wayne Gallman. So, Clemson has had two outstanding bell cows at running back to carry the mail here, 1,000-yard guys repeatedly. And so Feaster just hasn't been able to step up and get the work.
Yeah, is it time for him to reinvent himself? As I said before, when he first came to Clemson, this would be a great guy to have in the slot because he caught a ton of passes in high school. So I'm just thinking, is that in his mind that maybe he is not a college running back as far as doing the other things like blocking and other stuff, but he would be a great receiver in the slot. I just don't know whether he's thinking in those terms or not.
Of course, the top story here in Dallas is still waiting the B sample for the suspended 3 players, which include, of course, starting defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. We still do not have a resolution on that, but we do have some fresh audio from the man who presumably would be the #1 replacement for Lawrence, and that is Albert Huggins, the 5th-year senior who is used to this role, having played it last year to much aplomb and acclaim when it comes to having to play in place of Lawrence when he was, of course, dealing with that foot injury last year. Here's a little bit of what Albert had to say earlier today at Media Day at AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
It's a great blessing, man. It's a great blessing. I really do appreciate this opportunity, man, and just got to go out there and show my talents, man.
Have you ever wondered the last couple of years, because you're playing behind All-Americans, the best defensive line in college football, have you ever wondered, hey, if I got my opportunity, I could do what they're doing now?
Of course, man. I feel like all our defensive linemen are capable of doing what everybody else does, man. When their opportunity comes, they'll show y'all. In the next couple of years, man, I really do believe that, man. So, like I said, man, when that opportunity comes, you got to show up.
How did you find out?
Found out from Dexter. Yeah.
What was your first step? Did you just talk to him or coach or what?
Just give him a hug, man. Just gave him a hug and let him know, man, everything's just going to be just fine, man. Don't worry about this, man. This is just a game. This is just a game.
You never want something like this to happen, but is there kind of still a bittersweet the fact that you can relish the opportunity that comes from that?
Oh yeah, man. I'm thankful for my opportunity, man. Like I said, I hate that it happened to Dexter, man, but this is an opportunity of a lifetime, man. So like I said, I gotta open my arms up and take it in and run with it.
How much did him not playing as much last year because of the foot kind of help you in getting the reps and getting the rotations in last year?
I mean, I don't feel like it was because of his foot. That's the reason why I got more opportunity to play. I feel like I earned that opportunity on the practice field, and it paid off for me. And so, like I said, I've been working hard this year, just like I was working hard last year, man. And and I'm getting the opportunity again.
As far as just the way he's been with you this week, what's the biggest set of advice that he's probably given you?
Really haven't talked about the situation, haven't talked about the game, man. Like I said, we just really been, conversating like nothing ever happened, man, because nobody wants to talk about the bad stuff. You always want to keep good vibes around you. So we'll probably talk before the game, man, and conversate. But that's just what it is.
I know Notre Dame, they want to run the football very much, Dexter Williams and all that kind of stuff. How are you preparing to face a run-heavy team like that?
I mean, we've been doing inside drill for the past 2 days, man, and just make sure I critique my technique, man, when it's the run, man, and just have low pads, and I'll be just fine.
Dick said he got a whistle. Has he been coaching guys up?
yeah, man. He's been having this whistle for the last 2 days. At first, it was like a middle school whistle, and then he upgraded to a coach's whistle. And man, he's just for all this stuff that happened to him, all the stuff that's happening to him, man. He's keeping a positive attitude about it. I'm very proud of him for that, man. And I guess that's my coach.
It's funny, Albert Huggins can do the job. Niles Pickney can do the job. And, will they be Dexter Lawrence? I mean, Dexter Lawrence is a special player, and he's a cut above for a lot of reasons. But, these guys aren't that far beneath him. And so I don't expect there to be a major drop-off at that position for Clemson. I still expect that defensive line to plug the holes. I expect that they'll do a good job against the running game and play up to the standards that defense is set.
It's the one place on the team where I feel like the backup is not necessarily better than the starter, but can do an adequate enough job in place of the starter.
Well, the key point is if he can do like Dexter, and your ends have a good game because he's playing so well that he commands the double team, because that's what Dexter does.
That's true. You may see more one-on-one blocking up front, but don't forget Christian Wilkins is somebody you're going to have to deal with on that defensive front, and he may command. Obviously, he'll command some double team blocking, which would open things up. All right, just a few recruiting notes here before the top of the hour. Checked in on cornerback DeQuantius Watts of Atlanta, who continues to hear every day, he said, from Will Muschamp. In fact, he said Muschamp called him yesterday from Charlotte Motor Speedway while he was out there turning laps. So Muschamp obviously is trying his best to land DeQuantius Watts. Gamecocks are in good shape with him right now, but it's still anybody's ball game. USC, Ole Miss, and Oregon, plus UCF, where he was once committed, is still in the hunt. He said he'll take officials to USC January 18th, Ole Miss the 25th, and Oregon on the 31st. And he said Muschamp has not told him when he'll be in January for his in-home visit. Really likes the Ole Miss coaches, has a good relationship there. He said Oregon, the entire coaching staff, down to the special teams coach, all of those coaches have been talking to him, so he's got a good relationship there. He had set January 7th for a commitment announcement, but now he's not sure about that since officials are coming up after that. He may go all the way to February signing date before revealing his choice. Safety Colin Duncan of Montgomery, Alabama, did not sign early. He tells us he is still talking with USC about an official visit in January, camped at USC last summer, and took an unofficial visit during the season. And 2021 running back Will Shipley of Weddington High School, which is in Matthews, North Carolina, was among the prospects on the sidelines at USC today. Derek Boykins, one of their signees, also was there. So the Gamecocks are attracting some onlookers from the Charlotte area, which is exactly what they wanted to do by having this bowl game in Charlotte. Quickly, Duke won its bowl game today. Zion Williamson passed for 355 yards, did he not? And Wisconsin is beating Miami at the half in the Bronx.
14-3.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Good to have you with us on a Thursday night edition here during Bowl Week, heading into the big weekend of bowl games. USC and Virginia, the Belk Bowl in Charlotte. Of course, Clemson, Notre Dame in the national semifinal in Dallas, the other national semifinal, Alabama and Oklahoma in Miami. Let's talk all about it. We welcome in once again, truly for the final time of this football season. We appreciate them very much. The coach, Chuck Reedy, and the quarterback, Steve Tannehill. First of all, hope you guys had great Christmases, having a great holiday season. Coach, how are you?
Doing great, Phil. We did. Hope you did as well.
We did. Thank you. And Steve, on a back road somewhere, probably hunting deer again. Hope everything went well for you.
It did. Had my mom and dad up, and it went real well. I appreciate it. Hope everyone did with you guys as well.
Absolutely. So a lot of coaches in the Tannehill household for the holidays, right? See, your dad was a coach. You were a coach. Was your sister a coach as well?
My sister was, but she's in Virginia, so my parents left the day after to go to see her. Her son plays college basketball, so they went up there to see her because he had a game, I think, tonight. I'm not.
Yeah, those Tannehill athletic genes run pretty deep, huh?
I guess they do. Yeah, he's a heck of a player, just a sophomore at Christopher Newport University in Virginia. So things are going well.
All right, hang in there with us on the cell. We'll go to Chuck. Sounds like Steve is losing us there for a moment. So, Chuck, this situation at Clemson with the positive drug test on 3 guys and, 3 suspended, waiting on the B sample to be tested and the result come in. So far, nothing on that. What's your take on that from both where you view it now and your experience back in the day as a football coach?
Well, I don't know a lot about they're testing for so many different substances now, as opposed to, back in the day. I mean, it was basically steroids, so, I don't know a lot about it. I do know that when it's an SEC or an NCAA issue, as opposed to a school issue, it's a whole different ballgame. If it's a school issue, obviously you can handle it internally, but with the NCAA's involved, there's not a whole lot to do. I mean, it's in the NCAA's court, and I would be really surprised if Lawrence is cleared to play.
Yeah. What do you think of how Clemson has handled this thing? Dabo, as soon as they didn't tell everybody as soon as it happened because it happened last Thursday, but at its first media avail, they got right out in front of it and told everybody, we guess everything that there is to know at this point.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody in college football better than Dabo at dealing with things like this. I mean, he does a great job. He does a good job with the media, but he does a better job with the players. I mean, he was right out front, in supporting the players, which is what he should do. But he does a great job of that, and I think that all lends to the culture that he's created there. I think they've done about as good a job as you can do with it. They're conducting their own investigation, but here we are Thursday, and my understanding is that because of the holidays, there were just some issues with getting the second test done. So it is what it is, but they've done a good job of turning it into not a real negative situation. Trying to make the best out of it.
Make sure Steve is still with us. Steve, can you hear us? Hello, Steve. All right.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. Want to make sure you're still with us. I don't want to ask anything that would embarrass you going back to your college playing days, but did you ever were you ever tested? Were you one of those randomly selected to be tested by the NCAA back in the day?
Oh, yeah. When I was in school, we had just, Carolina had that steroid stuff in the late 80s. So we had random 18 players randomly tested every week. And then the NCAA came in, I think, once a year. So I'm pretty sure they weren't testing me for steroids, but I got tested frequently. But, you know, it is what it is. This situation, I think, is a little different because, especially nowadays with all the protein drinks and, you know, that's what makes it kind of scary. And you know, the first thing when I saw it was why would Lawrence have to take any type of, you know, he's a top 20 NFL pick, big giant guy. So, you know, it's unfortunate, and hopefully they find out what caused all this, because I don't think Dexter Lawrence is a guy that has to cheat to play the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to the coach and the quarterback here on Sports Talk, getting you ready for the Cotton Bowl in Dallas and the Belk Bowl in Charlotte. Chuck, just now from just a football standpoint, what is your confidence level in the triumvirate that's tasked with trying to replace Lawrence, at least in the lineup? The guys, Albert Huggins, Niles Pinckney, Jordan Williams, and just how much of an impact football-wise does Lawrence's absence have on this game against Notre Dame?
Well, I don't think Huggins is, you know, there's not a big, there's a drop off, but there, you know, Huggins played an awful lot. You know, he's all played an awful lot for the last, you know, 3 years. You know, he's a guy, he'll probably be drafted himself. So that won't be the big problem. The problem is depth, you know, because once you know, now you go to Pinckney, who's, you know, played a lot, but it's, you know, he's still a young guy. And then beyond that, I mean, I think they're playing freshmen. So the depth factor, I think, is more important than just, you know, Huggins replacing Lawrence.
Now, Coach, when you look at Notre Dame, and Ian Book is a good passer, but he's around only 6 feet. So if you're Clemson defensively, no matter who's playing on the defensive tackle position, it wouldn't their first order of business is making sure that the rush and obvious passing situations comes right in his face?
Yeah, they're going to keep him in the pocket and then get their hands up. And, you know, he'll have a hard time throwing over, you know, those guys. I mean, they're all, you know, 6'4" or, you know, or bigger, you know, and they'll get their hands up. He'll have a hard time. I mean, they're going to, you know, they'll put some, you know, they'll keep him in the pocket, you know, and then, you know, but, you know, again, you know, very few, and Steve knows this a hell of a lot better than I do, but, you know, quarterbacks, they don't throw over people. You know, you got to throw through passing lanes, you know, so, you know, he's just, you know, he can't be trying to throw over Wilkins or Farrell or whoever's in there. You know, they've got to be able to create passing lanes for him to throw the ball through, you know, so, but yeah, they'll get their hands up, and, you know, if he tries to throw over them, they'll knock him down.
Talking with the coach and the quarterback, let's go back to Steve and talk about the Gamecocks in Virginia. And I think South Carolina has the better overall personnel, Steve, but Virginia's got a quarterback and a receiver and a running back. They've got that little three-headed monster on offense that can hurt you. Now, I know they faced ACC competition. Make of that what you want, but is it a concern for a Gamecock defense that's down on some personnel and has had trouble with quality mobile quarterbacks in the past?
No question. We're down to a lot of third string guys. You know, and Kinlaw not playing hurts. You know, he's a big force in the middle. I think it's going to be one of them games where we probably got to score 30-some points. You know, the ACC, and you can continue to talk about the two conferences, but in these games, it kind of doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter because you get so much time to prepare. That you can make more change than you could. You get guys back healthy, which we are getting Bryson Allen Williams back, but we still are down to the, you know, we're at some guys that really shouldn't probably be playing or having to play, and moving guys from offense to defense just to get some numbers. And then, you know, to me, the biggest is the Bailey, the left tackle, him not playing. I think that, to me, is one of the things that worries me. Is he's had such a good career and been such a force.
All right, hang on, Coach. Hang on, Steve. We'll come right back to you with more here on Sports Talk. Don't go away.
support, and hope.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
All right, let's continue with the coach and the quarterback here on Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes here in Columbia, Will Pelagic in Dallas with Clemson. Back to Steve. You were with us there before we had to hit the break. Did you want to complete your comments there?
Well, first of all, Verizon needs to do something about their service, because that commercial, can you hear me now? I can't tell if I'm on or off. I'm about to get on the interstate, so I should be good.
Yeah.
What I was saying was the injuries. I think Debo not playing is one thing, but Bailey not playing at left tackle concerns me. I always think about going into these bowl games, kind of to me, the offense and defensive line, which one of those is better? And we're missing key parts of both. So it's definitely a concern on both sides of the ball. Defense, we've been playing kind of with injuries all year. And offensively, our offensive line has kind of been intact. So I worry about the injuries on both sides of the ball. And the coaches told me that Virginia has one of the best defensive backs in the country. And Debo not playing, that changes the game a little bit for our offense as well.
Yeah, their secondary overall is very good. They've got 15 interceptions. Bryce Hall, who you're talking about, has got a couple of them. Juan Thornhill has 5. So they're dangerous back there in the secondary. Chuck, South Carolina, against these mobile quarterbacks, they have a recent history of issues there. So defensively, what do you think? And you being an offensive guy for the most part, but you know how to run that kind of offense with a mobile quarterback and how to hit those particular gaps. So what will Virginia be trying to hit gap-wise with him, and how does South Carolina stop that?
Well, I think the South Carolina's, obviously they've had a problem all year stopping the run. And, I think that, as it is every week, that'll be the key. And, without Kinlaw, like Steve said, they're missing, a big part. So, I don't know. I mean, they're going to have to, they've got to contain him. They've got to try to keep him, inside, not let him get out there and run around. But, it'll be a challenge for them. And I think, as Steve said, the key, they're going to have to score a lot of points because defensively they're in such a situation that, Virginia's going to score some points. And, they just got to be able to match it, offensively and score enough points to win.
Steve and Chuck, you can even speak to this too. The thing that I keep coming back to with these two teams playing in Charlotte is who's the more motivated team to be there. And Steve, I know you having the connections you have on the South Carolina side can speak to this more specifically, but I guess what is your sense of how motivated this team is and how difficult is it with the preponderance of bowls now outside of the college football playoff? How hard is it to maintain that edge and that motivation to play in a postseason bowl that's outside of the periphery, if you will?
Well, I think that job is directly a reflection of the coaching staff you have. If they make it an important, and whether it's the Independence Bowl or the National Championship, I think the coach has to do a good job of making it important to all the players. Those guys that, like a Shy Smith or, who's ever going to play at left tackle, or Brian Edwards, those guys should be motivated because it's kind of their turn. And the same way on defense, whoever gets that call to replace Kinlaw, that guy should be pumped up. The way I look at it is you put on the uniform, it matters. And I think the coaching staff has to do a good job. And I would imagine Coach Muschamp does, because he's kind of a fiery guy and he's a competitor. But if you're a competitor, I think it doesn't matter what bowl game, you want to go out there and perform, especially they're all on TV. Mm-hmm. Every game is on TV, so everybody is watching. And again, I go back to that. I think it's very important to have the coaches make this game important to the program.
Well, Steve, you said something that's very important, because let's face it, South Carolina is the appetizer before the two semifinal games. So it may be some more eyeballs on them than usual because this bowl game is isolated in that noon slot.
And you also have the Michigan game going on, but Michigan's got 4 starters not playing because of the NFL. So I do think it puts South Carolina in a prime position to be seen, which you never know, man. There could be a kid at home watching and sees Carolina play, and one day he's a recruit. And so it matters to a lot of people. And you want to win for the program to get the wins and continue to win. And a win in the bowl game, it really makes a difference going into the off season. Mm-hmm. And I think it did last year, the way they came back in the second half, and I think it will this year. If we can pull out the win, no matter what the score is, every game to me is important. No question about it for our program going forward.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get from being around the players this week. I think they're taking it seriously and they are focused. So let me ask you this. We see another top flight player, DeAndre Baker of Georgia, pull himself out of the Sugar Bowl. And we're talking the Sugar Bowl here, Chuck, and we're not talking about a game in Shreveport. We're talking New Orleans Sugar Bowl, traditional bowl game. No, it's not a playoff game, but it's a Sugar Bowl. He's taking himself out. And, of course, we've talked about Debo, and it's something that's happening all over the country, and it gets greater every year. So what are football coaches to do? I mean, you want to win the game, and then people say, well, this will be a chance for some young guy to step up and play. But, I mean, I got to believe coaches are just burning up inside when they lose a key player. Can't tell me Will Muschamp doesn't want to have Debo Samuel available to play in this game. He wishes him well and says all the right things, but do coaches really mean that?
Well, you said it. I mean, no, I'm sure the coaches, it's very upsetting to them. I think it's upsetting to everybody, to the fans, to everybody involved. But I don't know that there's anything the coaches can do about it. Mm-hmm. The only thing they can do is, put on a good front and be supportive. I think we discussed this the last time we were on the program. So one of these days, some coach is going to stand up and say, "Hey, this is a bunch of crap. This isn't right. You signed up to play and play out your season, and you need to do that." But there are too many other factors involved, and these kids are being pulled in way too many different directions, and so I don't know that there's anything coaches can do about it.
Yeah, and of course they're afraid of the backlash from a recruiting standpoint. If you come out and criticize a player for doing this, this will be used against you on the recruiting trail.
No doubt about it. I mean, that's why you haven't seen anybody do that. You've seen everyone be very supportive. Yeah. All right, before we let you go, guys, what do you think is going to happen this weekend? Steve, Tigers, Gamecocks, who advances? Well, I mean, the Gamecocks only have one game, but, I mean, Clemson can advance. So what do the Tigers do? What do the Gamecocks do?
I think Clemson wins. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people think. Notre Dame's a good football team, solid on both sides of the ball. I think it'll be a good game. I do think Clemson wins. And I think Carolina finds a way to outscore Virginia. I hope we don't turn the ball over. That could be the downfall. But I got both of them winning Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've talked all year about the how weak the ACC was and how good the SEC, so you got two mid-level teams from each conference, and we'll find out. But I think Carolina, will find a way to win that game. Clemson, I think Clemson's going to have a harder time with Notre Dame. The big concern there is Clemson looking ahead to Alabama. If they get ahead of themselves, they can be in trouble.
Yeah. What you got, Will?
Clemson just confirmed the suspensions for all three players. They will not play.
Okay. Breaking news. So the B sample came back and was just as dirty as the A sample, I guess. We can put this behind us now. Guys, thank you so much. Great holiday. Happy New Year, Coach. Happy New Year, Steve. We thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Phil. Bye-bye.
Steve, we're still coming to do a show at Group when you'll have us. I don't think Steve wants us to come. I think he's afraid that we'll run off his customers instead of attract his customers, I guess. All right. We'll talk more about what Will just shared with us in a moment.
back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network from the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and also with reports on the Gamecocks and the Belk Bowl in Charlotte, continuing our coverage of postseason play for the Gamecocks in Clemson here on Sports Talk and South Carolina Radio Network. The news we just brought you right before the break comes via a statement from Clemson Director of Athletics Dan Radakovich, which reads, "This evening, Clemson Athletics received confirmation from the NCAA of suspensions for tight end Braden Galloway, offensive lineman Zach Ayala, and defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, all three of whom will be unavailable for Saturday's game against Notre Dame. The athletic department will have no further comment on the matter this evening as it considers all of our options, including appeals. It does also stand to reason that we might hear more about the next step from head coach Dabo Swinney. Both Dabo Swinney and Brian Kelly will have a joint press conference here at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, their final media availability before the two teams take the field on Saturday. They also are scheduled to have walkthroughs on Friday. Teams don't always necessarily go through them, as the release we just got from the Cotton Bowl says that Clemson is in for a quiet evening and a restful Friday, so that might even put some indication in the fact that they might even forego the walkthrough just because they have had plenty of time, and I think all of their practices have been inside Jerry World and inside the Dome, so they might even just take tomorrow off. That's something that has become a custom here and in other bowls of this nature. Notre Dame had their first couple of practices at in Frisco, basically at the Dallas Cowboys practice facility, but also they had plenty of time themselves at Jerry World. But guys, just your reaction to the news we have coming down here just a couple of minutes ago on the three players' B samples looking like they tested positive.
Yeah, not at all surprised, because I think historically the B sample typically follows the A sample. I think seldom are you cleared by that. So, and again, it doesn't answer any questions about, how and where and why, the questions that need to be answered. And I'll be interested to see what Clemson finally determines in this case with their own internal investigation. It sounds to me like they're going to try and be thorough. And I would imagine, barring an appeal in their favor, which obviously is not going to happen prior to the Cotton Bowl, if Clemson were to win, the appeal possibly could be heard, and he could be reinstated if they win the appeal in time for the national championship game. Otherwise, you've probably seen the last of Dexter Lawrence in a Clemson uniform, though he's non-committal about his future plans. But if he's got to sit out all of next year, you're not going to sit around and wait on that.
Yeah, and he said today that this particular situation doesn't necessarily affect his thoughts about the next level, but one would think that if it does come to pass that the suspension is extended to a full year, that cinches it up, I think.
So the NCAA is not so much interested in the how as they are interested in just the fact that it's in your system. The fact that you might have accidentally, without your own knowledge and without your own intent, got this in your system is of little consequence to them. It would seem to me that this is a extremely harsh punishment for kids who are innocent of taking this stuff in terms of how it got in their system. They got in unknowingly because they were just taking an approved supplement, a legal supplement that they got at the store or one of their trainers gave to them, and this stuff is in there. Just the fact that it's in there is enough for them to give you basically the death penalty when it comes to the suspension, the year-long suspension.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is the fact that, let's face it, a lot of times the NCAA, and we see how punitive they are with bowl bans and that sort of thing, they punish the school through the student. Now, the punishment in my mind here, and I think Clemson got ahead of it, is, if we let one slip through, then y'all going to ask us to police this. We're not going to police this. You better find where that stuff is coming from, but it's not in our hands. It's in every institution's hands to make sure. And I think that's what they're doing. Not only are they punishing, but they're absolving themselves of any responsibility of having to be a police force to try to find out for Clemson who may have slipped this medicine into these guys.
Well, certainly Clemson, like almost every other school, or maybe every other school, has its own drug testing program.
Yes.
I'm looking at the student athlete handbook. I don't have time to look through it all right now, but in their handbook, certainly there are protocols and regulations and punishments related to testing positive for drugs. We've seen where they've had players in recent years test positive or get caught with marijuana. Deion Kane got sent home from the Orange Bowl, I think it was a couple of years ago, after having marijuana turn up on his in his test or whatever. Sammy Watkins, of course, had an issue with it a few years ago when he was there, from a police standpoint. So they do test periodically their athletes, not just football players, all their athletes. They do have that in place, but do they test for this particular substance? I don't know. You know how deep they go with their testing program when it comes to steroids and things like steroids. Yeah. Who knows? All right. So the news there, certainly not what Clemson wanted to hear, not what the Tiger fans wanted to hear, but the three players, Dexter Lawrence and the other two, will be sitting out this game. Meantime, USC, as you know, getting ready for Virginia. You heard us talking with the coach and the quarterback about the danger of the Virginia offense. Quarterback, they have a receiver, Virginia does, who's got 81 catches. They've got a running back who's around 1,000 yards. The quarterback is over 800 yards rushing, over 1,600 yards passing. So some danger in that Virginia offense. We talked with Gamecock cornerback, nickelback, A.J. Turner, who's kind of new over there, as you know, previously a running back, but talked with him today after practice about wrapping things up and getting prepared for Virginia.
You think you could play effectively two ways next year and be a contributor, a regular contributor on both sides of the ball?
I do.
What gives you that thought? I mean,
just been playing football a long time. Even though this is a different level, it's still football, so you got to treat it the same.
How much do you anticipate playing against Virginia?
I'm not sure. That's just up to the coaches whenever I get in.
Stephen, what do you prefer? Which one do you like more?
I mean, I feel like I'm more natural at running back because I've been playing it all my life, but I do feel like I have the ability to do both.
You played DB in high school?
I did.
Montag was going to talk about some of the young guys in the secondary that are starting to pick up. RJ, what do you see out of those guys that are contributing right away in their freshman year?
Well, I know that they're farther along than me when it comes to the DB because I know I'll be asking them things, the different plays and what we're supposed to have. But just the few weeks that I've been in, the 3 weeks that I've been in the DB meeting room, I have seen them grow as far as them taking coaching and applying it from the meeting room to the field. And I really see that firsthand, so that's a great thing, especially for young guys.
You got a pick out there today?
I did.
How did it feel?
Felt great. It felt like high school because I caught that, I caught a pick like that in high school and the exact same way, turn over the shoulder kind of thing. So it felt great.
What's been the toughest transition for you from running back to picking up what you had to do in the secondary?
I believe going from running forward and try to outrun people, going from that to, backpedaling and trying to react to people. I feel like my body still isn't really used to it, but, I'm getting there. I'm trying to do extra stuff to get there, but I feel like that's the biggest transition.
All right, excuse me. A.J. Turner, new cornerback for South Carolina. We'll see how much he's used. I mean, he has not been back there very much, but the Gamecocks are in a position where, as Steve Tannehill pointed out, they need some bodies back there in the secondary. Having Jalen Dickerson back and able to play, that will help some. And they've got to put pressure somehow on Perkins when he does drop back to pass. They've got to, make him throw the ball on the run. Perhaps they can create some turnovers, get some interceptions. He's only thrown like 8 interceptions this season, so he's not prone to that. And South Carolina has not been a good sack team up front, so maybe it's too much to ask of this defense without Kinlaw and without their best defensive end in Wanham to put pressure on this guy.
Let's face it, some of the times they're not a good sack team because 1, 2, 3, the ball is out.
True.
So you can't do that. But here's the thing is you got to be patient and run your lane. And then you'd be surprised how many times if you do that, a mobile quarterback will run right to you.
Yeah.
Because he won't have a place to go. So you have to keep him in that pocket.
Yeah, Perkins, 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, completing 64% of his passes, 206 yards per game through the air. And when we come back, more from Dallas. Might sneak in a phone call or two as well as we continue here on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. They are in the fourth quarter right now between Wisconsin and Miami. Wisconsin 28, Miami 3. Can we contract the Hurricanes from the ACC, Corn?
Hey, you know what a Jewish woman's favorite wine is?
Careful.
Don't
What
do
is
it.
I want to go to Miami.
Oh, that's not
It's
nice.
old wives' tale. Anyway, go ahead.
That joke is older than your humor.
It's not Manischewitz.
Yeah. That's Manischewitz. No. Even though that's my personal favorite, Manischewitz. Yes, love it.
not right.
Love a good glass of old sweet Manischewitz.
Of course, the news that we brought you first here on Sports Talk, at least at the bottom of the hour, is the fact that the 3 B samples for Zach Aiella, Braden Galloway, and Dexter Lawrence all were upheld by the NCAA. All 3 will not play, which means that Albert Huggins, Niles Pinckney, and Jordan Williams are tasked with the triumvirate responsibility of having to take their place. Of course, one other player that will factor in on the Clemson defensive line is the freshman defensive end, Xavier Thomas, who you see in a lot of sub packages, especially in passing downs. He has had an enormous impact not only this season, but will do so next season, presumably following the departure of most, if not all, of the starting members of Clemson's defensive line. I had a chance to talk to him not just about his first experience at the college football playoff, but his overall experience in his opening season at Clemson.
I mean, it's a great experience going through this experience. I mean, first season, I knew what I was getting myself into, coming in with these great older guys and just basically being a sponge for them and just learning.
What have the older guys kind of told you about this experience, and how has that met your expectations?
I mean, they basically just told me I would have to come in and work. I mean, that was my expectation coming in. Just have to come in and just make an impact as much as I could and the best of my ability, and that's basically what I've been doing.
How does your role change with Dexter going out and maybe even appearing in some more sub packages as far as that goes?
I mean, I wouldn't say my role changes too much because he's a D tackle. I mean, and I didn't want to play his position. But, I mean, it's just the next man up mentality for us. I mean, we hurt for him. It's an unfortunate situation. It's an unfortunate situation, but, I mean, we just have to play like a next man up mentality. So.
How have they kept the mood kind of light? Is it kind of something they're trying to do to make sure that you guys don't dwell on that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we've been through adversity all this season. I mean, with Kelly leaving and things like that and people getting hurt. I mean, so it's just stuff we've been going through all season. It's not going to affect us that much. I mean, we're going to play for them. I mean, we hurt for them, but it's just an unfortunate situation.
Making the transition from high school to college, does the college season seem longer?
I wouldn't say that much because IMG really helped me. I mean, that basically was like a pre-college thing for me. I mean, you were on the college-based schedule, so that really helped me a lot. So it really just wasn't that much an adjustment. Only adjustment was the competition-wise. I mean, going against college guys in practice and the workouts are more intense and things like that. You have to be more focused.
What are you expecting out of Notre Dame?
They have some great playmakers on the outside. I mean, their quarterback is pretty mobile, and they have a great offensive line up front who can run and pass block pretty well. So it'll be a good challenge for us.
Where do you think the biggest growth of your game has been since getting here?
Just my knowledge of the game. I mean, of course, my talent-wise is pretty good, and there's a lot of things I can get better at. But just my knowledge-wise of actually knowing what to do and how to do it and having the right technique to do it.
I know you don't want to look too far ahead, but you might have to replace a whole unit next year with all the guys that could be leaving. How much does that kind of make your mouth water and salivate a little bit as you look at what next year might be, you, KJ, and some of the other young guys who might be stepping into those roles?
I mean, it'd be a great thing. I mean, I'm always looking for a challenge. I mean, that'll be a great challenge to replace those type of guys that's leaving. But, I mean, it's just like a cycle. I mean, you look at the past guys like Vic Beasley, Grady Jarrett, and they had to replace those guys, and now we have to replace them. So, I mean, we'll be a great D-line just like they were.
What would it mean to win a national championship in your first year here?
It would be a great thing. I talked to these guys like Trevor and Justin Ross. We talked about that before we even got here, how we wanted to come in and make history as a freshman. And that's exactly what we're doing. That's what we expect.
All right, Will and Xavier Thomas. You're going to hear a lot more from Xavier Thomas, no doubt about it, in the years to come. Let's jump to the phones. We've been rude to callers. We've had people calling in all night and haven't been able to get to them. So let's go to Brian in Spartanburg. Up here next on Spartanburg. On Sports Talk. The SP's got me there, Spud. Brian, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you guys this evening?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I wanted to make a few comments on the Dexter Lawrence situation. First, I mean, it bothers me that the NCAA, well, that a player can make a conscious decision to, for example, smoke marijuana, and they may get a 1 or 2 game suspension. And then if what they're saying is true and this was accidentally ingested, the NCAA says, we don't care how it got there, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
That bothers me a lot, that attitude. They don't want to find out what's right. And, they're acting like they don't want to find out the truth. They care that it's there. But also read today, just for information purposes, that what they tested positive for, if it's in trace amounts, it does not have to be listed in supplements on the ingredients. So there are tons of things, even in GMC, I think, what one of you guys were saying, that if you took literally a vitamin, that you could show up with trace amounts of this particular thing. And the other thing that really bothered me, I mean, I kind of expect it to an extent, but when rival fan bases really pounce on you and accuse you of doing all this wrongdoing, the fact of the matter is, I mean, I don't know what goes on in Clemson's strength and conditioning program. That's a fact. But what I do think is a fact is whatever's going on there is going on everywhere else. It's going on at South Carolina. It's going on at Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Alabama. So don't be so hypocritical. I'm not speaking to you guys. I'm talking about fans in general. Don't be so hypocritical, because I promise you, I don't personally think Clemson's trying to get away with anything. I'm a fan of Clemson. But if they are, everybody else is too. So please with the hypocritical stuff.
Well, listen, thank you. Every fan base lives in a glass house, and you shouldn't throw stones, because everybody lives in a glass house. You might be taking some joy out of what Clemson is going through if you're a Gamecock fan, a Georgia fan, Alabama fan. But, look, Alabama's not being forthcoming with their deal. Now, Will, you're saying, I guess you've read it somewhere, or you talked to somebody who says it's a drug-related thing in Alabama?
I've made some contacts from people who are actually here covering this game. They've all basically come to a man and say that, I don't know if it was necessarily recreational drugs or PEDs, but it seems like that is a similar refrain that is being used across there. And that would stand to reason, also the same kind of thing, why there would be held out, not just in this game, but beyond.
Yeah. And I think Chuck Reedy was exactly right. When you talk about Dabo Pro, I mean, this is where he really shines. Being able to control the story, and you control the story by simply being out front with something that people will believe, and you give them the benefit of the doubt that he's telling the truth. I mean, now, Nick Saban in Alabama, they chose to not bury their heads in this thing, but bury the information and let people draw their own conclusions, as Will is and the people there at the Cotton Bowl are doing. And they may or may not be right. In this case, you knew from the very beginning when it became public what the issue was. There was no guesswork going on here. The only guesswork is, how did this happen?
Well, the thing about it is it depends on you pick the personality you deal with. Dabo is outgoing. He wants to be open and forthright. Where Saban, hey, the heck with you. And that's his attitude. He's closed.
Or perhaps Dabo is smart enough from his business days to know that this is how you deal with a crisis. This is called crisis control, Will.
But we've also seen him act similarly to Saban in the past, where he sent guys home who knowingly did things or things of that nature. This is a unique showing of transparency from somebody at his level, and he's hoping that it somehow at least pays itself off. It won't do so next week, but he's hoping that whatever happens in the possible appeal process could at least give them, like you said, we've said all day, the benefit of the doubt.
You're talking about a more serious issue here. You're talking about a year-long suspension versus like when Deion Kane was sent home. That was just a one-game deal, and he had to clear his own situation with Clemson. That wasn't an NCAA thing. This is an NCAA thing.
But the more serious is they got to find out where it came from. Because if it's inside the athletic program, they got to find who it is.
Will, great stuff. Enjoy your day tomorrow. We'll have more from you and more from me from Charlotte with Media Day there. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.